Hey, I'm going live again. All right. I'm still struggling with this audio stuff. The live stream I did last night, the audio was decent. It definitely was picking up the audio from the amp directly. But there was still a lot of glitchy noises and stuff in it. I don't know if it was because it was clipping, but also I've noticed lately my computer has been sort of when I'm recording stuff or playing stuff back, it seems to have these little audio glitches in it. It's definitely not from amps. It's something in the computer, and I just updated the drivers to one of my audio interfaces today, so I was hoping that would help. But I tried to record a couple of sample clips with this software, and it sounded like it was still there. Also, I also noticed tonight that recording a sample clip, some of the guitar audio, the treble comes in really loud and then it gets really dark sounding. I don't know what that's all about. Maybe that's just because I was recording and not actually going live. So I'm going to try this again. I thought I would update people because I haven't been posting a whole lot lately, and 2024 was kind of a year for me with the amp stuff of a lot of R&D, trying things out, trying to come up with new ideas, new sort of formats of things. And I came up with some stuff I think is pretty cool, and a lot of it hasn't really been shown yet. Some stuff I may have taken some pictures of or done a short clip. One thing I designed was a power amp. I'm not going to show that one in this video, but I feel like that maybe needs a little more work or it could be improved on. But it's the same size as the Thylacine amp that I built. Thylacine amp was something that I built last year that actually turned out to be really popular. It sold out of them. I made a bunch of them. It's the first time I've ever built something that it was cloned after a Sun Model T, but it was a low watt version of that, and it had a switch so that you could switch from amp mode to preamp mode and use it as just a standalone preamp. And I don't know, it's really cool. I use mine all the time for recording at home, for jamming at home. It sounds just like a Model T. I love the thing. So I've got some people that have reached out to me recently, like, "Oh man, I slept on your listings for that, and I see that they're sold out now, so I may have to make some more of those." Which, yeah, I mean, it's excellent. I actually just sold one that went out to Oregon, and the guy lived in the same town as my cousin Andrew, who moved out to Oregon many years ago. And I was like, "That's strange." And I told him about my cousin. He goes, "Your cousin's not named Andrew, is he?" And I said, "Yeah. How would you know him?" And he turns out he was renting a room from him, or it was a roommate from him for with him for a couple of years. And my cousin had told him about my amps, but he just had no idea that it was me that he was buying the amp from. So shipped that out to him, and he said he was really happy with it. So that was cool. But yeah, I've got this thing hooked up. This is something I built probably 3, 4 years ago. I'm not even sure how many years ago. But I never built more of them, and I actually thought about this, and I was thinking about making a build series, another build series, because um, I made one series of how to build a guitar amplifier, like detailed, like not the type of thing you typically find on YouTube. Usually you'll see like summary sort of pieces of how to put an amp together, but this is like step by step. It was 8 hours of building in 8 different episodes, maybe longer than 8 hours. But a bunch of people actually built the amp that I did. It was made into a little radio, so it's on my YouTube channel, DeathCap Amplification YouTube channel, if you wanted to check it out. But yeah, a bunch of people made it and were successful, and they have really cool working amps, and they had never built an amp before. So I thought about doing that with this thing. I decided to name this the Dark Fang, and what's really unique about this little lunchbox amp is it's running a Compactron tube. The tubes that are in amps are typically, well, I'm not going to get into all the stuff about tubes, but this tube is really cool because it's kind of like three tubes in one. It's a really small, compact, obviously, Compactron. So it's like a small little bottle-sized tube, but it's kind of fat, and it has 11 pins in it, which is more than most of your guitar tubes would have for amplifiers. Either you'd have a 9-pin or an octal 8-pin tube in most guitar amps. Some might have a 7-pin tube. Older amps were using some 7-pin tubes, but this is 11 pins. And I decided to do this because I thought back at the time I was experimenting, it's still got my Black Cat amplification logo on it, so that needs to go and be a DeathCap. But I only built one of these for myself, and it turned out amazing. And I thought this would be really cool, I think, if people could build this, because it's not that difficult of a build. And even if you've never built one before, if I decide to make a series of it, I'm just trying to see if there's any interest in this. Would you actually attempt to build an amp? If you're ever interested in it, leave a comment on wherever this video is posted, because I'll probably upload it to YouTube later. But if you're like, yeah, man, I'd love to try to build another one of your amps, or let's try this thing, it's pretty simple. It's only 2 tubes. It has a power transformer, an output transformer, just like most amplifiers do. And it has a lot of really nice controls to really make the sound, set it to your liking. And my thought originally was I was just going to make a 1-tube amp, right? And I thought the Compactron tube would be cool because you kind of have like almost 2 or 3 tubes in one, depending on how you design the circuit. So I did this one with an extra tube. So there's 2 of them lit up here. You can see I have LEDs behind them to make them glow a little bit more exaggerated for the aesthetic. But the 12AX7 was added, which is a standard guitar amp type tube, to get lots of gain in it. And this is a little gain monster. It actually reminds me a lot of like a Sun Model T kind of a sound when you push the amp. But you could do a lot with it. You can kind of get some of those sort of Fender-esque kind of clean sounds. You can get some pushed sounds, but it definitely dooms. I mean, if you're a doom metal player, you like doom, this amp can doom. And especially if you use fuzz pedals with it, this thing's a monster, and that's what I'm going to show here now. But yeah, I'm thinking about maybe making a build series when I get time. Not sure when that's going to be, because I'm kind of starting to get backed up in amp orders now. I've got a lot of people interested. And another thing, if you saw any of my live videos from this week, I'm making and cloning a Laney AOR amp, which I don't think has ever been cloned before. I can't find any clones of them. But mine is like a lower watt version of it. I could make a higher watt version, but the customer that was interested in kind of working with me on this wanted a lower watt version. And it turns out I built it as an 18-watt amp, but it's pushing out up to 30 watts, which is pretty insane. So it has a lot of power. But that amp that was the hardest amp I've built to date. And it's not just because it has a lot of parts. I mean, it has way more parts than most of my amp builds have had in the past. Probably equivalent to like a Soldano SLO type of an amp in as far as parts equivalence. But it's just very weird the way Laney did stuff. I've never seen an amp built with certain things that they did in that amp. I was like, what does this even do? I don't understand. Which is really weird, because I've probably built 100 amps by now, and I've never seen some of the stuff. And it has some really crazy boost features that you can switch: bass boost, mid boost, treble boost, and they're extreme boosts compared to most amps that might have a boost feature. And I was like, how did they do that? And they're tapping off of things I couldn't understand. And I finally figured out how they were doing it. But I also, when I built the amp, turned it on the first time and it wasn't really working right. So I went back to the schematics. I'm like, I know I built this thing to the schematic, but turns out there were mistakes in their schematics that I found. So there were 6 or so different versions, and I was trying to look at all the differences between them, and some of them had mistakes and some didn't. And I did figure out what those were. It was the way certain things were labeled was a negative voltage where it should have been a positive voltage, and some really weird stuff like that. So that was throwing me off. But once I figured that out on my own, I was able to get a really nice working amp. And if you saw my live video from last night, this thing sounds incredible. I really need to do some Doom stuff with it. But let me do a little sample here of this one. Again, this is called the Dark Fang, something I built years ago. But I'm thinking about making a build series on this if people are interested in maybe trying to build this themselves. But it is a crazy Doom amp. I'm gonna do no pedals right now. I'm gonna mute my audio from the mic because you can hear all my string hits, which is weird. I gotta figure out how to get better audio from this thing. Hopefully you'll just be hearing the amp, and I'm gonna play it just pushed right now. I'll play with the gain a little bit, and then I'm gonna hit it with the fuzz pedal, and it's Doom City. So let's go. You turn that off so hopefully there's not a lot of noise. But yeah, this thing dooms. It can, and right now I've got it playing through the Captor X, which is emulating some speaker cabinets. I don't know if those are really the best choice speaker cabinets for that sound. I've got like a Mesa Boogie and a DV77. I think I could probably come up with some better cabinets, but I really don't want to. I could spend forever flipping through them to try to get amazing sounds out of it. But this amp it's so cool. It's only a couple of watts. It's 2 tubes. It's like something that could probably be built in a weekend. Maybe a little bit longer depending on what you build it in. If you do something like this, you got to do a lot of drilling and stuff. Well, just about anything. You'd probably have to drill holes. But I don't know. I just thought it would be a good one to maybe make a video and share it with people. Share the diagrams, the parts needed, where you can order your parts, similar to what I did in that first build series on building the D-Lab Raven 3-watt amp. So yeah, I'm super excited to possibly share that in the future and make a series of videos, because I think people would really dig this. Not only because it's a great sounding amp, but it's a fun thing to do. It's really fun to to build these things. And you know, I didn't have skills before I learned. I learned all my stuff on YouTube, so I'd be teaching people how to build this thing on YouTube, just like I learned from other people teaching me how to do stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about it because I really like this amp, and I haven't done anything with it yet. I've never sold one. I just made this one, and I'm constantly getting it out to do stuff with it because it's just fun. It's just really fun to play. So let me move on. One more thing. Well, yeah, that was just a sample. I'm not going to get into this one anymore. Let's let me show you a couple other things that I've been doing. This thing, this was really cool. I decided to build this after, well, as sort of a secondary part to the power amp that I designed. The power amp is probably a little bit bigger than this, but not that much bigger. It's pretty small, and it's like an 80-watt power amp based off of a Mesa Boogie power amp and like a Sun Model T ultralinear power section. And I really like it. It's nice, but I think I could make some improvements. Maybe not make it quite as small. Maybe give it a little bit of breathing room, because those tubes get super hot. They're just huge, huge power tubes. But yeah, if you have a power amp, you need a preamp, right? Or something to run in it. So I thought, well, I could build these preamps all day long, smaller units. But this is something I did that was a little bit more unique than just a tube preamp. This is a hybrid JCM, Marshall JCM 800 clone, right? So those were the popular amps in the 80s, 90s, still popular today. I've made a lot of clones of them. It's a small little 5-watt amp. All the transformers and tubes are inside of it. It's completely enclosed, right? Tolexed, pretty cool. And it's also a JCM 800 preamp. So on the front, here, let me put my guitar down so I can actually show this a little bit easier. I don't need these headphones on either because my voice isn't coming through them, just the guitar was. But yeah, so this, let's see if I get this a little bit closer. So it has 2 gain knobs because I decided to sort of let you control a couple different gain stages to get different levels of gain. One stage is maybe just a tad bit brighter than the other stage, but instead of 1 gain knob, there's 2, so a little bit more flexibility in dialing in your gain. Of course, the bass, mid, and treble, and then there's a master control there too for your volume. And there's a high and a low switch for the input level, so if you have a high gain input versus the low gain input, you have a switch there instead of 2 jacks, which I've been doing that on a lot of amps. And here's where all the crazy stuff comes in for any gear nerds out there. So I don't know what you'll see on here. Hopefully you'll be able to see this, but starting from the left, if the camera aspect ratio is correct, you have your power IEC, a 1 amp fuse, speaker impedance 4.8 or 16. You can run 2 speaker cabinets. You can run a full stack with this thing. And again, it's about 5 watts. It's running 1 EL84 power tube. There's the line out section and this mode switch. The mode switch is a feature that I put on the Thylacine as well. This Thylacine is the Sun Model T clone, so you can run that as just a preamp. So you can switch it to the 5-watt amp mode or the preamp only. If you switch it to preamp only, you do not have to have a speaker load on this unit. You can run it straight into a computer interface. You can run it into a mixing board, a PA system, you know, whatever, a power amp, you know, any of that kind of stuff. And there's 2 line outs there, and also it has an effects loop built in. And there's a cooling fan because with the EL84 tube, the preamp tubes don't get very hot, but the EL84 does get a little warm. So if you're running it for a long period of time, you can turn that on, but I did make it switchable. That way, just in case you want to turn the fan off and not have any of that sort of outside noise, because it's a little noisy. It's like a computer fan. But it doesn't add any noise to the circuit. You can leave the fan on while you're recording if you wanted. But another cool thing about it is if you run it in the amp mode and you actually have a speaker cabinet connected to it, you can also use the line outs at the same time and run those to, like, say, a mixing board or whatever, you know, another power amp or something, and power a different stack or whatever. So really cool little flexible unit. Run it as a practice amp or a recording amp. Again, this is like a prototype. It works really well. If there's interest, I could make more of them, but that was one thing that I designed last year. Another thing is, if you're familiar with the Thylacine amp that I built, This is very similar, but it's just a preamp. There's no amp in this at all. It's just a preamp. So the tubes and the power transformer are inside, but it's just got line outs. So it's the Thylacine. It's a Sun Model T preamp, basically, is what it is. It's identical to the Sun Model T original 1970 schematics, but you have some other options here. You have an XLR. So if you wanted to go right into a computer interface with an XLR jack, you could do that. And then 2 additional 1/4-inch jacks to go to other sources, power amps, whatever. And you have a level here to set how much signal you want to send out to those devices. Usually I keep it all the way up, but like if you had any clipping going on or something like that to your source, you could lower the level for it. But they work the same for all of these. So yeah, it's basically just a Sun Model T preamp built inside this little, I mean, it looks probably big when I put it up close to the camera, but it's pretty small. It's very like small little size, pretty lightweight. But the tubes and everything are inside there. But it has all the same features that the Thylacine has as far as the amp sound goes and everything. It just doesn't have a power section. So you can plug this into another amp's effects return and use that amp's power tube section. So with any of these preamp units, you could do that. So yeah, so this was a prototype of the Thylacine preamp. Then we had the JCM 800 one I just showed. The power amp, I don't have easy access to get to that right now, but I might be able to get to the Thylacine. You've probably, if you are subscribed to my channel or on my social media pages, you've probably seen this guy before. This is my prototype that I built for myself that I use all the time, but this is the Thylacine Sun Model T clone, and it has a 2.6V6 output section. So it's an amp and a preamp, and it has that same mode switch thing on the back here. So yeah, you can run it as a preamp, standalone preamp, or run it as an amp and use the line outs at the same time if you want to run it as an amp. But if you run it as an amp, you have to have some kind of speaker load on the amp. You have to have a speaker connected. If you run it as a preamp, you don't have to have any speaker load there, because the way that mode switch works is it's cutting power to the output transformer and the output tubes safely, so that you don't need to worry about the amp getting damaged without having a speaker connected to it. So yeah, that was this was probably kind of the thing that I got the most use out of what I built in 2024. These other preamp units and the power amp are kind of like, I'm just trying stuff. I'm trying to see what kind of smaller formats I can make things in. Again, this one wasn't last year's build. This was a couple years ago, but I really would like to do something with that, whether it's make more of them and sell them or make a build series out of those. But we could listen to the JCM. How long have I been streaming here? Probably a lot of people are getting bored. 23 minutes. Let's try this real quick. It's taking me a second to hook it up. We're going to do the JCM 800. Now, I'm going to run it as a 5-watt amp here, because I'm not going to run it as a preamp into another power amp and all that. That's a lot more hooking up of things to do. But we basically take our input from our guitar, our pedal board, or whatever, go into the speaker outs, which is my cable for running it into the Captor X. That's how I'm recording this stuff. I'm going to turn the fan off for now, just because I'm not going to have it on that long. Alright, let's get it warmed up. Put these guys on. Let's get a different guitar for this. 1 second. How about use this guy, because the Doom guitar sounds good in that amp, but this is a JCM 800, so I think this will be better. Oh, I gotta plug the guitar in. Here we go. let me check the levels and stuff, because I think it's kind of low. All right, I'm going to use the same, sorry, hold on a sec. I'm going to use the same IRs and everything as I did for the other amp, the same speaker cabinet selection basically. So I haven't really dialed this in or anything, but I'm going to use it as if I had a real JCM 800 amp. Again, it's about 5 watts. Sorry, I need to bring this over more so you can see it. And I'm going to probably turn a tube screamer on or a boost pedal, just a simple boost pedal, because that's how I would use it. If it was a real Marshall amp, I'd put one of those in front of it if I was doing the thrash stuff, so I'll kind of do that. But yeah, just take a listen to it. Let me mute my audio here. Okay, so yeah, JCM 800 all the way. It's got those rock, heavy metal tones for sure. It's an exact clone, preamp clone of a JCM 800. Well, actually, no, I lied. It's a little bit hot rodded clone of a JCM 800. I did do a couple of things that I like to do to JCM 800s to hot rod them. It's not one with extra tubes and extra gain stages, but I did make those stages just a little tiny bit hotter than they normally would be, because I feel like it needs that little bit of extra punch. And of course you hit it with the tube screamer. I actually hit it with a Klon boost right there, Klon pedal, and it just sings. It's so good. But yeah, I love these things, these small format things. I'm always into building stuff like that. So if you have an idea, or you have something like, hey, could a clone of a such and such preamp be built in something this small, let me know and we'll talk about it, because I always love doing stuff like that and experimenting and trying new things. And these units that I came up with have like a nice little stackable kind of format, and that's kind of what I was planning to do with them, is actually have I haven't done this yet, but the power amp I built is the same exact width. It's about the size of two of these put together. So the power amp would sit underneath, and you know how you could just swap out these units, these preamp units. And I was thinking about adding some clips on the side to just clip them into place so that you carry one unit, a power amp and a preamp that you're going to use. If you want to switch to a Sun Model T preamp, the cool thing is you could use two of these preamps with the power amp. It has two inputs, so you could run one of these into one input and another into the other, switch back and forth, or run them both at the same time, you know, stuff like that. So I've done a lot of really cool combinations and testing with that. But yeah, I love this small format stuff and building things into tight spaces. I've never done anything until these where all the tubes and everything were all built inside of it. So very neat little R&D project I did last year. Just something I wanted to show people, show you guys. If you had an interest in something like this, let me know, because I haven't really built any of these for producing yet, or you know, selling to anybody. But if you're like, hey, I could really use that, you know, or something like that, right? Let me know, and we'll talk about it. All right, I'm going to sign off here. Fun little quick conversation, update, and jam. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'm going to get better at this streaming stuff because I know the quality's not great. I've got some equipment coming I think might help a little bit, but it's mostly getting used to the software and trying to figure out how to route the audio signals right. I don't know if the guitar audio is going to really turn out well this time. Again, I noticed tonight that it was a little, well, I don't know if it did in the stream or not, but before I streamed, I did a little test, and it was like, it sounded like it was getting tinty and then low, and I wasn't changing anything. It just did it. So I don't know what that's about, but we'll figure it out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support. As always, you know, I love amps. I love building amps. It's a passion of mine, and I like talking about this stuff with people. So, you know, hit me up if you got ideas or you want to talk about something that you've seen here. Take care, and I will see you again soon. Peace.